Have you ever wished you could have your writing published in a major newspaper? Well, I have some good news for you. If you submit anything to the New York Post, they'll probably print it. And I know that because they just published this awful article that gets a bunch of basic facts wrong and makes a pathetic case for why Christians face a special kind of persecution in America. Let's all shed a single tear for Sophia A. Nelson, who wrote this piece. Now, she probably had nothing to do with the headline, but it gives you an idea of just how bad this piece is gonna be. Christians are sick of being punished for their views in America. Now, if you're saying to yourself, which views? Christians have a variety of views. She's making this all up, right? Well, you're asking the right questions. Just wait. It only goes downhill from there. Here's what you gotta know. The whole piece boils down to one idea. Being a Christian, to Nelson, means being a bigot. The funny thing is, I don't think that's true. There are really wonderful, progressive Christians out there. I think they're wrong about God, but I'll freely admit their beliefs inspired them to do really amazing things and fight for civil rights and reproductive freedom and social justice and all kinds of good causes. But Sophia Nelson thinks Christianity is all about spreading hate. It's telling that Jesus doesn't make any appearance in her piece at all, because spreading the gospel isn't really what she's talking about when it comes to sharing her views. I'll get to her main argument in a moment, but let's start with the obvious mistakes. Right off the bat, Nelson claims we are a nation founded on Judeo-Christian values. She doesn't say what those values are, but that's obviously a very Christian nationalist attitude. As if the founding fathers were not just Christian, but her specific brand of conservative Christianity. Neither of those things is true. She also spends the rest of the paragraph defending her lie, with evidence like words from Scripture are inscribed on our money and our most hallowed institutions. I assume she's talking about "In God We Trust" when referring to money, but as I'm sure you all know, that phrase doesn't come from Scripture, and more importantly, it didn't appear on our paper currency until the 1950s. It was a political move, not a history lesson. The same thing goes for godly phrasing on government buildings and "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance. Just because Christians have historically used their power to etch their religious beliefs on walls or in the law or in pseudo-patriotic rituals doesn't mean we should just accept that that's how it's always been or how it ought to be. Nelson also says, our Declaration of Independence acknowledges our Creator as the being from whom all our rights flow. First, that's not the Constitution, so who cares? 2, you can't even really blame the writers for saying that when they knew nothing about evolution or genetics or toilets. 3, they didn't really believe it, since they also owned slaves and also believed women and non-landowning white males couldn't vote. What else were they gonna say? I mean, it's all just bad evidence to support a bad idea. Quick side note. You know how I know it's not hard to be a Christian in America? Because Christian nationalists keep pointing to things Christians have done to promote Christianity in America to the Christian majority in America in justification of their delusion that all of this means Christianity is at least unofficially the nation's religion. There are federal holidays for Christianity. There are references to the Christian God in oaths for public office. People traditionally put their hands on the Bible in court no matter their faith. That doesn't mean we have a national religion. That means Christians have imposed their views on all the rest of us, despite the US being an ostensibly secular country. So spare me your fake tears about how hard it is to be a Christian, especially when you clearly have no idea what it's like for the rest of us who have to live under rules created by Christian lawmakers and traditions perpetuated by them. Stay tuned for my next video where I talk about how hard it is to be a man. Okay, back to the dumb article. Later on, Nelson also refers to Joe Kennedy, the former high school football coach who insisted on performing prayer rituals for a large audience at midfield after games, and then whined when the school asked him to do his job, and who unfortunately just won his case in front of the very conservative Supreme Court. Nelson writes that, like Kennedy, her public Christianity has led to her being cut off, thrown out, removed, as if we are these hateful, bigoted religious cultists who just want to push our faith on others. That is simply not true. She wasn't cut off, or thrown out, or removed. Neither was Joe Kennedy. But pushing his faith on others was precisely the argument against what he did. By using his position and authority as a coach to coerce students into praying with him after games, whether or not he openly asked them to join him, he was doing exactly that. Students and parents said that. But the Supreme Court didn't care. Kennedy wasn't removed from his job for being a Christian. He quit his job because he wasn't allowed to shove his religion in kids' faces. There's a difference. Here's another big mistake made by Nelson. She invokes Title IX in her defense. Academics need to read Title IX more closely. Religion is a protected class, just like race, gender, and sexual orientation, including heterosexuals. I'm gonna ignore that idiotic parenthetical about heterosexuals because I assure you, we heteros are doing just fine. But what is she talking about? Title IX is about discrimination based on gender alone. The Department of Education says Title IX protects people from discrimination based on sex in education programs or activities that receive federal financial assistance. Religion isn't involved here. SportsCenter is not airing Title IX documentaries focused on athletes' religious views. Maybe Nelson should read Title IX more closely, since she's obviously never seen it. But all of that is a prelude to the bigger question. How did Nelson supposedly get punished for being a Christian? That's the heart of this entire piece. So what happened? Did she lose her job because she told someone she goes to church? Was she reprimanded for reading the Bible in her office during her lunch hour? Of course not. It's never anything like that. Thankfully for us, she tells us the answer. When I was the scholar in residence at Christopher Newport University in Newport News, Virginia, I proudly and openly identified as a Christian woman of color. In October 2021, I criticized DC Comics for making Superman's son bisexual, saying in a tweet, "I don't get why this is necessary. I don't. What if Christian parents of children reading comic books don't want their kids exposed to bisexual characters? This is being pushed on kids." She's not done yet, but I just want to give you all a moment to do an eye roll at the screen. Are you good? Okay. Let's continue. Straight away, my private tweet. Tweets are not private. That's why they are tweets. If you want your tweets to be private, write them in a diary and lock it up. Straight away, my private tweet was brought into my public university workplace, and my Christian faith was attacked as a cover for my homophobic views. I was deemed homophobic, unsafe, and violent by an openly bisexual faculty member who then incited colleagues, university officials, and students against me. Students at my college protested and demanded I be removed from my post. And despite the fact I deleted my tweet, wanted to hold a campus forum to discuss the matter, and twice expressed regret for causing offense, I was sidelined for the remainder of my tenure and was told I would not be invited back to teach or otherwise. Wow. She deleted a public tweet of something people had already taken screenshots of, and of a horrible thing she still believes, and then she offered to hold a forum to, debate if bisexuals are icky, I guess, and she can't believe everyone's still mad at her about it. I mean, if your role is to be a mentor to students, and you've publicly broadcast your anti-LGBTQ views, it shouldn't come as a surprise when the school isn't interested in bringing you back and students aren't interested in coming to you for advice. What stands out to me, though, is how Nelson's public display of Christianity was nothing more than whining about the mere existence of a bisexual character who doesn't even exist. As if Superman's fictional son owes her a particular sexual orientation. As if being exposed to an LGBTQ character would corrupt kids. As if a same-sex relationship is a problem, while opposite-sex romance is just fine. I mean, it's not like she ever complained about story arcs between Superman and Lois Lane. As if reading about a bisexual character might turn kids gay. I mean, it's just mindless, homophobic panic over nothing. It's bigotry, pure and simple. Guess what? Reading about a character who can fly shouldn't make anyone jump off a building either. We read stories and watch movies in part so we can see the world through the eyes of other people. That builds empathy and understanding. We don't have to agree with or even accept their decisions, but to say someone else's idea of love is wrong because it might teach kids to be more understanding of their LGBTQ friends, or maybe more accepting of themselves, means you're a jackass. In this case, a Christian jackass. And come on, she thinks Christian parents might not want their kids exposed to bisexual characters. Meanwhile, the Bible is full of rape and genocide and incest, and that's just in chapter 1. Anyway, Nelson is now doing exactly what her critics said. She's using her Christianity as cover for her horrible views. In her mind, the pushback against her open display of homophobia is really an attack on her faith, even though there's no reason to think any of her critics gave a damn about her Christianity at all. Honestly, some of her critics are probably Christian too. Nelson says people like her are punished, facing consequences if we simply express a faith view. But no one went after her for being a Christian. Just like no one would have been upset with Joe Kennedy had he just privately prayed on his own. This isn't about faith. This is about what her brand of faith is doing to other people. In this case, the students she's supposed to be working with. If I were an LGBTQ student, I wouldn't want to be around her. I wouldn't feel safe around her. I know what she really thinks about me without even knowing me. I also wouldn't feel protected at a school that thinks someone like her is a scholar worth admiring. Christian nationalists like Sophia Nelson think any opinion, any stupid, thoughtless opinion that is connected to their religion should be inherently shielded from condemnation. Would faith-based racism be acceptable to her in the same way? Who knows? Nelson also ignored the fact that a lot of the anger from her critics has to do with how Christian nationalists are literally forcing their religious views on the entire country, like with the overturning of Roe. We are so far beyond merely expressing opinions. This isn't cancel culture. This is not an honest exchange of ideas. This is one person who thinks LGBTQ people are icky, whose views are being used to punish LGBTQ people in red states across the country, and possibly beyond if Republicans regain power, complaining because she has to face consequences for her despicable opinions. While we're at it, if she thinks Christians are under attack, then what religious group would she like to trade places with? Does she think atheists have it easy? Muslims? Jews? For some reason, she never says who has it better than her own crowd. I mean, does she want to do an exchange? I'll speak for all atheists. We will give you all the non-religious people in Congress in exchange for all the Christians, since they have it so bad. She'll take that deal, right? I mean, who knows? She might. It's not like she does any research before writing things. It is just an irresponsible essay from a privileged Christian who's finally coming to grips with the fact that hateful beliefs that might be taken for granted inside her church bubble come across as bigoted and prejudiced to decent people outside that bubble. That message still hasn't gotten through, apparently, since she decided to publish this essay in the Post, highlighting her ignorance for a wider audience. I'm almost impressed by her complete lack of self-awareness. No one in her life has the heart to tell her that her Christianity isn't the issue. It's the hate that flows from it, at least in her case, that's the problem.